I'm really delighted that you're here today. This is kind of an interesting topic. Actually, I feel rather passionate about this topic. I took care of some of this planning early in my life, and I have some fun stories to tell you about that. But you know what? This is not a set it and forget it discussion today. So my goal is that you'll get some action items, you'll have some learnings, maybe, and if you have a question on something we're talking about, now just to be clear, I am not an estate planning attorney, just so you know. However, in our practice, we look at holistic financial planning, and it includes a lot. It includes obviously getting your income settled so that you're solid with your income in retirement. You're not under money stress. We're going to be looking at your investments and how they could be allocated, what they need to be doing. It's not just retirement planning to us is not just picking stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Okay. It also includes tax planning, understanding the taxes, helping you make good decisions about that. And knowing what they are, because honestly, your taxes come out of your paycheck before you see it when you're working, and when you're not working, they come out of your accounts. So that's a big deal. Healthcare planning, especially for those who are going into retirement before Medicare, and then estate planning. Now, why is this so important to us? Because as we go into and as we're helping people with things and setting up their accounts and whatnot, sometimes we'll see a gap and something that needs to be addressed. So we'll be talking a little bit about that as well today. So today we're going to be talking about putting your legal affairs in order. That's the way I like to think about estate planning. Sometimes when you say the word estate planning, it almost sounds like we're talking to people with millions and properties and all of this kind of stuff. And we're not. We're just talking about an everyday average woman who has accumulated, she's been responsible with her money. There's just some things that need to be in place. So retirement is an exciting milestone, and you want to ensure that your financial and personal affairs are in order. I think that's just as important as planning, your dream vacations and checking off your bucket list, right? Because when it's not in order and something happens, it's a problem. And you don't want to put yourself or your family through that. So estate planning isn't just about leaving a legacy. It's also about protecting your assets. It's about making sure your wishes are accomplished, and it's giving yourself and actually your loved ones some peace of mind. So we're going to dig into this topic of these legal affairs and talk about that a little bit. So like I said, our philosophy of retirement planning at Thea is income planning, your investment management, tax planning, healthcare, and this estate planning. Now, I have to tell you this. It is so common for a client to say to me, oh, I've been needing to get on top of that. Or I have a will, but I don't have a trust, or I haven't looked at it for years. I have to tell you, when here I am, a planner, and because we work so much with attorneys and whatnot, I had an occasion, I thought, you know what, I probably should pull out my trust and take a look at it. I was so mortified. So in my trust were instructions on taking care of my kids if I should die. Now, what you have to understand is my children now have children. So it was definitely out of date. So of course I updated it. I've updated it again since then because, I have to drink my own Kool-Aid. So, all right, let's go ahead and hear. As you know, at Thea Financial, we talk about this person, this accomplished woman. And I've had people say, well, what do you mean by that? Well, as an accomplished woman, you have spent decades making informed decisions. You have overcome challenges, you've achieved success, whether it was in your career or a business or your family life. And whether you realize that or not, in our eyes at Thea Financial, we tag you as an accomplished woman because you've worked hard to build this strong foundation. And a really good time to look at this foundation is when you're thinking about retirement. Now, you might already be retired, or you might be just, it's just now on your mind. You're saying, I got to get my affairs in order. So as you approach this next transition in your life, you might have some questions about, well, what should I be doing? What's the next steps? So what I want to do today is help you identify if there are any gaps in what you have put into place that need some attention. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about are these things. Number one, we're going to talk about estate planning. This is our to-do list today. number one is to refresh your legal documents. And we'll walk through that in just a minute. We're going to help you think about how to organize this information. And number three is I want to help you revisit your family plans and your intentions. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about refresh your legal documents. So basically, there's four very, very important legal documents that you need to be sure are current. Okay, so let's just talk through what these are. So create or update your will. Now, if you have a trust, you will also have what is called a pour over will. But if you don't have a trust, you definitely need to have a will. Now, a will, even though your assets will go through probate, it is still a written document that outlines how you want your assets distributed and who will handle your affairs. Now, if you already have one, you've got to be sure that it reflects your current wishes and life situation. I'll just give you an example of something that happened with a gentleman I was actually working with. He worked at Costco and had been there for a long time, and he had a lot of Costco stock, and actually had, Costco's done very well. So he had a substantial amount in his retirement accounts. So as we were looking at this, I said to him, we were talking about his beneficiaries on this account, and all right, he had been divorced and remarried. Well, guess who was on the beneficiary document? His ex-wife. Now, what does that actually mean? What that means is that she would have gotten the retirement account. I don't care if he's remarried. Whatever's on that document is what happens. So you've got to be sure that you go back and you look at these things. And in fact, if we work together, we do all this updating when we move things around and make sure everything is exactly the way you want it. However, when we're talking about a will is, it will give instructions, but it'll give instructions to the court. So what happens if you don't have a trust with a will, you may end up going through probate. You won't, but your family might. Okay, so let's talk about a revocable trust. First of all, what is it revocable? Revocable means you can change it. And you definitely want that. You don't want an irrevocable trust unless you want to put something into place. Maybe there's a divorce situation and you want to be sure that assets go to your children and not to your ex-spouse's family. Okay, there's reasons to have an irrevocable trust, but today we're going to talk about a revocable trust. So what is a revocable trust? Number one, it means you can revoke it. You can change it. You can make changes. You can update it, which you absolutely need to do. When I had our trust made, when I did the second update on it, we had a grandchild. Yay! So we have a grandchild. Well, several years later, and in the trust, I had outlined things that I wanted to go to this grandchild. Several years later, as I'm looking at it again, well, we have a second grandchild who is not in the trust. So what does that mean? He would have gotten nothing. Okay, that was not my intention. That's why I'm saying you've got to keep your eye on this ball and just do the updates on it. So a trust will avoid probate, which means that there's fewer costs and the assets will move faster. One of my clients who had all of her legal affairs in order, they found an account that they had forgotten about, and it was an old account, but it actually had a decent amount of funds in it. Her husband passed away. And in the account, the beneficiary was his ex-wife who had passed away. It was a mess. So it took us 6 months working with an attorney to get this thing all straightened out. And you know what? It was $4,500 for that one account. So what I'm saying is that it's really important that you have a grasp on this and that you keep things current. There's more control over timing with a trust. An example would be you can delay an inheritance until a child or a grandchild reaches a certain age. So in other words, the trust would maintain ownership, and when the child reaches a certain age, they would be able to inherit. I have seen this done. I had a client whose husband had passed away and her children were still, in their teens. And in the trust, they had it so that they would get an inheritance when they turned 20, when they turned 25, and when they turned 30. And she wanted it to be, parceled out that way. And a trust allows you to do that. Okay. You also can take care of a special needs situation that you might be dealing with. And what this does is you can set up what they call a special needs trust inside of your trust. And what this does is it protects the beneficiaries who are supported by government programs. It keeps them from losing their benefits. So like I said, I'm not an attorney, but I can guide you to some of the questions that you'll want to be asking. A trust is also especially important if you have multiple properties, or if your properties are in different states. So you may have your home in wherever you are, Colorado, or you may have and a second home in Florida. All right. Now you're dealing with two different states. So you want to be sure that if that's the case and that's something that you have, it makes those complex situations easier to deal with. The other thing that happens is complex family dynamics. Now, this is especially true with a blended family. It's also true when there's maybe, occasionally we'll have someone with a child that's really had a drug problem or whatever, and you can deal with that inside of the trust. Okay. And again, a revocable trust is usually where I recommend people start, unless your attorney coaches you to do an irrevocable trust, but it wouldn't be for everything, because once it's irrevocable, it is irrevocable. Whatever you have in there is all it's ever going to be. Okay. The next thing that I wanted to mention is this power of attorney. Now, most of you probably know this, or you've even had experience of being the power of attorney, maybe with a parent or something like that. But what a power of attorney is it allows a person to have the authority to pay your bills, to manage your bank accounts or your investments, to handle real estate transactions, to file your taxes, and take care of business while you're still living. Okay. So without a power of attorney, now this can be while you're living or after you've passed. If you've passed, the power of attorney takes care of the dollars and keeps everything working while all of the estate is settling and things are getting done. Without a power of attorney, though, your loved ones might have to go through the court to get permission to manage your affairs. And truthfully, at a time of stress that's already there, adding this one layer of stress, it's so time consuming, it's expensive, and it's hard. It's just a hard situation to have to deal with at that time. So a power of attorney, if you have a trust, it'll be part of the trust. If you have a will, you need to be sure that you also put a power of attorney together. Now, there's another type of power of attorney I just wanted to bring up. One is a financial power of attorney. The other one is a medical power of attorney. Now, what the medical power of attorney does is this document lets you name someone you trust to make medical decisions for you if you are unable to speak for yourself. So they would only step in if you are incapacitated. So you're unconscious, maybe you're in surgery, or you're mentally unstable. They can speak with the doctors, they can choose treatments and make decisions on your behalf. Their role can adapt to real-time situations. This might be two different people. You might have one of your children, as an example, is amazing with money. Okay, they're amazing with money, and you want them to be the power of attorney over your financial affairs if it's ever needed. The other one might be a person who is just super close to you, very in touch with who you are, and you might want them to be the medical power of attorney. Okay, so you can have two different people on these documents. And the final one is this healthcare directive. Now, the healthcare directive is a little bit different than the medical power of attorney. What the healthcare directive does is it allows you ahead of time to determine what you want to have happen in the end of your life. So I'll just tell you what mine is. I don't want any heroic measures for me. If I'm dying, I want my family to let me die. Now, here I am telling you this, right? I mean, this is kind of weird, right? But anyway, that's the way I have it done. My husband and I sat down and we went through it. The document has a lot of questions. What happens if this happens? What do you want to happen? What happens if this happens? Do you want to be on a feeding tube? You know, if you're brain dead, what happens then? So you answer all those questions when you're of sound mind. so that when that time comes in your life, and all of us eventually are going to die, that the doctors and the family knows your wishes, right? So this is kind of a weird thing to be talking about, isn't it? But you know what? This is so important, and it feels so good when you get this done. It feels so good. And then you just maybe every other year on the date of your retirement, you update it. It's just that simple. So, all right. The next thing we want to talk about is organizing all of this. All right. So I have a couple of tips for you on this one, because one of the things I have seen with clients who have had a parent pass away and they're dealing with paperwork. Now, if your person that passed away was a super A-type personality, they had their towels folded exactly right, and they didn't leave anything to chance, right? Everything is in its proper place. But a lot of people, especially as they age, they're not like that. So I want you to consider using, I like to see a portable document file. So it has a latch on it. You can actually, if you want, you can actually put a padlock on it, but it's something that can be carried so that if something happens. Now for me, what I have is I have a big binder. It's about 3 inches wide, the spine on it. And I have sheet protectors in there for each different topic. And then behind the sheet protector, I put the account information. Doesn't matter how you do it, but here's what I will tell you. I have told my family, if anything happens to me, find the binder, because everything you need to know about me is in that binder. And let me tell you what's in there. Okay. So first of all, your will or your trust, your document needs to be in there. I'm not really a fan of keeping this stuff at a, safety deposit box, because sometimes it's hard for your family to get to it unless they know to get the key out of your desk and that's where everything is. It doesn't matter. And I have some clients who will put all of this online in a folder that they hold that their family can get into. Doesn't matter that much. I personally like to have the paper documents because, otherwise I'm scanning things. It's kind of a hassle. So I just keep a paper trail. So you want your legal documents, your power of attorney, your will, your trust, and all of that. But then you're going to want to sort things out so your family knows what you have and where it's at and who to call and how it works. So the tip that I wanted to share with you is, as I've been putting this together over the years for myself and also for my clients, is what I tell them is that, let's say on an investment account, once a year, you go in and you print off your end of year statement. You take last year's end of year statement out, you put this year's end of statement in. Why? Well, it has your advisor's name on it. It has your account number on it, and it says what's in there. It's perfect. If you have insurance policies, if you have a life insurance, every year you get a statement on that. Take last year's out, pitch it, put this year's in, so that everything is current. And what I like about doing this is that even for myself, I can go back and I can look at things. I can see what things cost. I understand how they're getting paid. Like on the life insurances, it's an auto deduct, right? But my family wouldn't know that if something happened. So I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. So your insurance policies would be your life insurance, your health insurance, if you're on Medicare, what is your Medicare number, right? Your supplement or your Medicare Advantage, or if you have vision or dental insurance or any of that, whatever the policy is, put it in that binder or that file so that your family can find it. Auto insurance, homeowners insurance, pet insurance, anything that has that type of a thing on it. I like using the last statement to identify those because the account numbers are there, the agent is there, and everything. You don't have to rewrite stuff, okay? Property deeds or mortgage information. That's another really important one. Any transactions that would be necessary for, number one, for payments to be made, but number two, if you outright own it, be sure that your family has those documents or that they can get their hands on them. Car titles is another one. Equipment, anything of that nature. Now, my husband and I own a vineyard, so we have a lot of equipment, right? We've got tractors and pickups and mowers and pluckers and all kinds of stuff. All of those documents, all of those titles need to be in that binder so that family can find it. Account information. Now, this would be banking, okay? A pension account. an annuity account, anything like that, any type of an account information. Again, once a year, I print off my bank statement. I actually have quite a few bank statements because we have businesses, but I put those in the binder just so that they're there. If my kids walk into the bank with those, they can find them. It's easy. It's easy for everybody to work on things. Another thing is bills. How do you pay your bills? So I don't know about you, but I love it when it's an auto deduct. But if I passed away and something needed to be turned off, my kids would need to know how to get to that, right? So make sure those instructions are in there. Passwords. Important passwords. Okay. So anything that is that you use online, you want to be sure that those passwords are in that book. That's why it needs to have a lock on it, by the way. So somebody can't walk in and pick it up and walk out the door with it. But passwords, update them when you change them, or have some method that your family can find the passwords. So what I'm saying is that when you have all of this, if you can put all this together in one place, I promise you, your family will be eternally grateful. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, I've got the biggest mess, well, just start on it a little bit at a time. Okay. Just say, okay, I think I'm going to get a hold of these documents and I'm going to go down to, the local stationery supply store, get a really good box, something that's secure, or a great big binder and some sheet protectors. I'm just going to start collecting this. It will feel good for you too to have that done. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to do was the final thing is to revisit your family plans and intentions. Now, this is really another thing that's very important because family dynamics change. Okay, so first I want to talk about beneficiaries. Beneficiaries need to be updated on a regular basis. There's a reason that I say that, because sometimes what we'll find is that the beneficiary designations are out of date. I just told you an example of that with a client that had an ex-spouse on there. But beneficiary designations override the will. Whatever's written on that document is what will happen. Now, in a trust, if you have the accounts in the trust can be the managing partner in these beneficiaries. But if it's a will and it's not written on there the way you would intend it to be, whatever is on there is what will happen. Okay. So you have two different types of beneficiaries, obviously, your primary and your contingent. There's another category called per stirpes, and I'll explain that. Primary is if I die, I have 3 kids, they all get 1/3. Okay, that would be primary. So the accounts are split by third, everybody gets what they have coming, and that's the end of that. Contingent beneficiaries, if one of my sons passed away, then his children would get his portion. So that's what that means. So if I have 3 sons, 2 of them inherit 1/3, his children would inherit 1/3 as well. That's also called per stirpes. It's a Latin word for bloodline. And it means that the assets would go to the bloodline of the person that passed away. You have to be careful about that though, because it would leave out a new wife. It might leave out an adopted child. So I find it's the best thing to do is actually name the beneficiaries. Now, I do want to mention one thing. Laws change. Like as an example, when Secure Act 2.0 went in, all retirement accounts that are inherited have to be distributed in 10 years. All the money has to be pulled out. The money has to be, it doesn't have to be spent, but it has to be reinvested into a taxable account. Well, that means that the taxes have to be paid. So I actually was working with a gal, and we were talking about this, and what we ended up doing was we moved her contingent beneficiaries to her primary. And how she did that is she said, well, if my kids inherit this retirement account, is pretty substantial, but she really wanted her grandchildren to get some of that. Well, if the parents were to give the grandchildren some of those dollars, they would have to pay the tax first. By distributing it to the kids, depending on if they're a minor, there's a grace period where that doesn't have to be distributed. And then it starts when I think it's 18. Okay. So there's some strategies like that your financial advisor would know or should know. And that might have something to do with how you set up your beneficiaries. Okay. Another thing is on the beneficiary documents, whatever, like I said, whatever is on there is what happens. So you should update, you should take a look at your beneficiaries when you're doing, I don't know about your advisor, but we do this annually with our clients. Whenever there's a beneficiary, if a daughter gets married, you need to change your name. That's an important piece, right? You don't have to have current addresses necessarily because the Social Security identifies that individual and they can track them down that way. But you do need to keep, if you have a grandchild born, you want to add them to it. Otherwise, they're disinherited. And that would not be what you would be thinking about. Okay. Now, the final piece of this is your legacy. Legacy is more than just assets, though. It could be family heirlooms. It could be the book that your family writes together about your life. Could be anything of that nature that gets passed down to family. But what I want to say is that thinking about your charitable giving, having a plan for that. If you want your church to get, if you want to bequest assets to a church or a charity or something of that nature, you know, which assets do you give? Well, you want to give the IRA assets because there's no tax on them. So there's charitable gifting and charitable planning that you can do. My husband and I have an orphanage in Kenya, and we had one of our people who've been contributing, they wanted to pass some of their IRA money to that orphanage. So we were able to help them set that up. So the point is when he passes away, it's going to go to the orphanage. There won't be any taxes on those dollars, and other monies then can go to the family. So there's lots of ways to do this, is what I'm saying. You might want to establish some kind of a fund that is held in trust that will be funding education for your own family or for, you know, families that need help, whatever. My point is don't leave this out, because if it's an important part of your life, you want to be sure that you include it. Okay. And we're almost out of time. I can't believe it. What I'd like to do is invite you, if you're saying, oh my goodness, you know, well, I don't know who you're working with. I hope it's with us. But if you're not, if this is part of planning, okay, just having your money invested and hence having somebody keep it diversified, that's not retirement planning. I'm sorry. That's just having a stack of investment statements and somebody that's pulling the levers. What you need, and what I believe is really important, is the whole picture of your financial life, and your dreams and goals and desires and wishes are accounted for in this process of retirement. If that's something that you're thinking, man, I need to get on top of this, I'd really like to do that. What I'd like to do is just give you an opportunity. You can set up an appointment with me or someone on my team and just click on there and say, if you're already a client, you want to think, oh man, maybe I better double check. We're totally good with that. We are absolutely happy to do that with you. If you're not a client yet and you're wondering, maybe I need to talk to them. I've been thinking about it. I've been listening to Cathy for a while on these podcasts or on the weekly webinars, and it's probably time that I did that. Please go into the schedule, find a time that will work for you, and grab 30, 45 minutes. And we'll see where it goes from there. But we'd love to help you with that. So thanks for being here. It's been fun. And we'll see you again next week.